Hi, this is Besito, as usual. Um, Today I'm going to do a video requested by a lot of people, and I'm finally getting to it. Many have asked me, can you please talk about your lineage within the 21 divisions, voodoo, whatever it is? A lot of people say that I always talk about a lot of lineages and uh, societés and cofradías and stuff like that. Why not explain a bit about yours and what's the history, where do you come from? Okay, so yeah, so I'm finally getting to it. Well, my family lineage, the cofradía is just another word for societe, or which societe means society. Cofradía in Spanish just means fraternity. It's kind of like an association. Cofradías are, like I explained in other videos, mutual aid societies, or basically small or even large fraternities, in which the purpose was mainly religious in certain aspects. Many cofradías originated uh, through the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church would encourage African slaves, uh, or even free blacks in those times, Africans or Creoles, to associate into cofradías. And these cofradías were focused on, like I said, mutual aid. So it was focused on helping people with anything they had during their lifetime, be it building a house, be it clearing a piece of land to do maybe a house, or to plant uh, crops and stuff like that, or even uh, to organize into harvesting. But mainly the cofradías were focused on religion. So the cofradías would reunite and pray and even come together when a brother of the cofradia or sister has died, and help out with all the expenses, etc., etc. So all the ceremonies, and the cofradias were focused around the church. So they were organizations uh, kind of planted by the church for those African slaves and whatnot. Later on, cofradias kind of get into independent societies, still kind of spiritually centered, but they branch off into their own uh, entities out of the church. And these cofradias were focused sometimes on one ethnic group. For example, Congos were very big into cofradias, people from the Congo. Uh, Another ethnic group were the Minas. Uh, many cofradias, and sometimes they were by nation, sometimes they were not. They were just open to anybody within the vicinity or the area, or the family sometimes. These cofradias usually have a patron saint, a Catholic patron saint, and one of the most popular, as I mentioned before, is the Holy Spirit, El Espíritu Santo. So you're going to find many cofradías dedicated to the Espíritu Santo in the Dominican Republic and even in Haiti. Same thing with Saint John the Baptist. That's a very big, a lot of cofradías with Saint John the Baptist as the patron. Same thing happens in Haiti as well. Um, there is another cofradia, very famous, which is for the Cristo de Vallaguana, and the Cristo, that Christ, or the Christ of Vallaguana, is the patron of that cofradia. And many cofradias have different patrons, saints or whatever. In more modern times, they just made luas, cofradia patrons, or they would basically pick the saint that corresponded with the lua. My family's cofradia, when I talk about family, this is my blood family, and this is why it's inherited in my case. Even though I did have initiation ceremony performed and all that. So that cofradia originates with on two sides, actually, because it was a merging of two traditions. One of the traditions, I don't know if I've spoken about it before, was the cofradia of the Holy Spirit, which is centered in Cotuí. And this is the oldest cofradia in the Dominican Republic and in the whole New World. This is the oldest cofradia or African spiritual fraternity in the New World, established in the first colony, which was Dominican Republic. One of my great grandmothers was a functionary of that cofradia in Cotuí. Her name was Petronila Rondon. She was a servant of that cofradia, which basically honored the Holy Spirit yearly, and it was a cofradia focused on the Holy Spirit, where they did a lot of ceremonies. Of course, Misterio was part of it, but the patron was the Holy Spirit. She then marries my great-great-grandfather, which was from Moca. His name was, it went right now, but Estefano Rosario. He was a papaboko of what is now called popularly the 21 divisions. I don't know if they used to call it that in those days, because we're talking about probably the 1700s or something. I think it was the 1700s, because the cofradia was well, on the side of the Cotuí side. That's been from the 1500s, going towards the 1600s. So the other side, it's not clear when it was founded or when the tradition started. But when the traditions merged was when Estefano Rodriguez, I'm sorry, not Rosario, Estefano Rodriguez from the Rodriguez family marries Petronila Rondon. And these are one of my great grandparents from my mother's side. So when they came together, they moved to Moca, Las Lagunas de Moca specifically, and again, this was like 1700s. And those two cultures, the Cofradia society of the Holy Spirit from Cotuí, she brought that aspect, and he brought the worship and the service of Loa. In that family of the Rodriguez, the patron Loa was Barón del Cementerio, San Elias. For those that don't speak Spanish, the Baron of the Cemetery, Saint Elijah. So when they merged those two things, it kind of created a whole new thing or family tradition, because it was mainly a family tradition. After that, all their children were basically, most of their children, I'm not sure about all, but most of their children were trained and were initiated into the tradition, and that tradition itself again flourished into something new, being a merger of the Cofradia society and the Loa worship. So it basically created a new fraternity, a family fraternity, with the patron being Barón del Cementerio. Now, like I said, uh, the offspring of Petronila Rondon and Estefano Rodriguez, most of them were servants and trained, and a lot of them were papabocos and mamamambo. One of the I would say the most well known from them was my great grandmother, Tomasina Rosario. Uh, Tomasina Rodriguez, actually. Rosario was her last name when she got married, and she's right over here. That's Tomasina Rodriguez. So she ended up being the queen of the cofradia, because these cofradias have kings and queens. They have a lot of other positions and ranks, like treasurer or plaza or confianza, which is like a confident, and many other positions. Sub king and queens, or vice king and queens. A lot of things, princesses, princes, etc. There's a lot of positions in these cofradias. So Tomasina, which is right there, daughter of Petronila Rondon and Estefano Rodriguez. So she is Tomasina Rodriguez. She became very well known for her labor and for her basically for serving Lua. And she was a mamamambo, very well known in Las Lagunas de Moca and even the surrounding towns. She had a brother, which was named Francisco Rodriguez. Francisco Rodriguez also stayed in the area of Moca, but more towards this part called Villatrina, which is not so far from Las Lagunas. It's just going up the mountains. Villatrina is a very high, elevated point of Moca, almost one of the highest, I think. So he lived up there. Francisco Rodriguez was a very malicious papaboco. So he was known for being malicious and working more with the left hand. He got jealous because of the title that Tomasina basically got to work up to or inherited. He wanted to be the king, but he was not. Right now, I'm not sure at that point who was the king, but it was somebody else in the family. And he wanted basically the things that you get from being in the high position, which was land in those times. In those times, you would inherit a lot of land, being the head of these cofradias, and basically Tomasina got these lands and was the manager of the lands inherited from the family. And they were into agriculture, so agriculture was a big thing, and they would make money off of agriculture. So he wanted to have more than what he had, because he did have a lot, but he wanted as much as Tomasina, and he wanted the fame also. So there was a sibling battle, and it was a spiritual battle. Everybody knows about this till this day and talks about it, till this day in La Laguna de Moca. They battled it out, and it was very ugly. But he was a very bad papaboco, but he was very powerful, and a lot of people recognize that. Tomasina was very benevolent. She was loved by everybody, even outsiders of the town. People knew her as far away as the capital, Santo Domingo, because she did have children that lived over there, and she was very known because she was a person that loved to help the community, the family, outsiders, be it family or non-family, etc., etc. The cofradia, for the main part, was a tradition that was in the family. So it's inherited, but there were initiations. So obviously the cofradia has an initiation, which is the baptism, as well as other things. But mainly the baptism, which is the highest grade in the cofradia and in most lineages in the Dominican Republic and northern Haiti. And at at a certain point, I'm not sure when, from the story that I was told by my papaboko, the cofradia opened up to non-family members within the area. So they started taking in people that wanted to be part of the cofradia because it was a beautiful thing, I guess, in those times. It was a beautiful thing in those times. People wanted to be part of it, and they were, but they wanted to go in deeper. So the cofradia slowly developed a system into integrating people that were non-family members of the town. And, obviously other people came in that were not from the town because, that's how it just was. And they used to bring them in and initiate them into the cofradia to be servants of law, etc., etc. The cofradia, like I said, the Barón de Cementerio is the patron, but we do serve most of the law found throughout the Dominican Republic, and even some that are more exclusive towards the Haitian side, because we did also integrate some stuff that was not of our region, or not completely inherited down the family. One of those people that brought a lot of things to the cofradia was my papaboko, and that was Tomasina's. By the way, this is was Tomasina's husband, Pascual Rosario, and this is why the cofradia is. And he was also a servant, papaboko, and he used to work with Elias in San Miguel. So he is Pascual Rosario, and that's why the cofradia is Rosario-Rodriguez, because it's really from the Rodriguez. But when he came into the family, basically marrying Tomasina, he became part of the whole system, and then Tomasina's offspring were of the last name Rosario-Rodriguez. So, and Tomasina's offspring were the main ones that carried the tradition. So the cofradia became La Cofradia San Elias Rosario-Rodriguez. That's why the two names. My grandfather, you can't see him too good in that picture right there. His name was Mario Rosario. He was also a papaboko. He didn't get to do much things because he died early on. So he died basically when I was 5 years old. So the one that really took me on later on in life was his brother, Justiniano Tano Rosario, papaboko. And he was my papaboko. He was the one that initiated me in my teens. And he was the one that trained me. He also sent me to train. He was a very well-known person. He used to travel around the Dominican Republic and in Haiti because he was a salesman. So he developed a lot of relationships throughout the island with people for business, and also as a papaboko, because he was also within the Papaboko Association, which in those times in the Dominican Republic was still it was still, in function. And I think now in Haiti, in certain parts of the countryside, it still functions that way. In the Dominican Republic, it's kind of died out a bit. But he was one of the head ranks of the Papaboko Association on both sides of the island, and he was very well known. So he was one of the people that brought in other aspects into the cofradia through exchange with other people that were his colleagues or comrades, whatever you want to call it, compadres in Spanish. and because he was a very popular person. He had a lot of compadres and comadres. This, people that speak Spanish will understand. Uh, so he brought also the system of Macaya. He was a Macaya initiate, and he brought that system to the Cofradia. Okay, and also he brought certain other aspects that have to do with Macaya, and also with the Gere cult or division. He brought in a lot of things, so it made the Cofradia very strong, and that's one of the things why one of the reasons why the Cofradia became very popular in Las Lagunas de Moca and in that region of the Cibao. Was very well known and well respected. So it was a blessing, to be part of it. So basically, like I said, my Papaboko ended up being Tano Rosario. Justiniano Tano was his nickname, Rosario-Rodriguez. And he was the one that trained me. So, and he also sent me to train with a lot of the local, we call them brujas or curanderas or servidoras. Some of them were mambo. Some of them just had other titles, etc. And other papabocos, other brujos, curandero, servidore. So he would send me to all these people because he was already of old age, and he didn't hold as many ceremonies. So he basically sent me to see other stuff because he knew there was so much around the island, and things were so diverse that he wanted me to see and not get stuck on one lineage. Although I follow my lineage exactly to the T as he trained me and by the book, because the thing is, every lineage has their own rules. In my cofradia, I have to follow a certain rule, so I don't adapt anything that's from outside of my lineage. Although I respect it and I admire it. And sometimes there's things that I see in other places that I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. I mean, and I admire its beauty, but I cannot incorporate it into my system because that's just how we do things. And to incorporate something, it would have to be approved by the council of the cofradia, basically. And right now, at this point in time, a lot of the elders are basically dead. So, I mean, a lot of the new council are there, but it's not the same. So I'd rather not play with it as the elders did. So I leave it as is. But basically, every lineage follows its protocol. There were a lot of important ceremonies in the cofradia, like I have mentioned before. The celebration of the Holy Spirit is one. I think I mentioned in one of my last videos, talking about the CDs, the music I do. We open up our ceremonies singing to the Espíritu Santo, the Holy Spirit. And that is one thing that transferred over from the Cofradia of Cotuí, the Holy Spirit veneration, which is, very much a part of everywhere you go in the Dominican Republic, because a lot of people are very, they follow the Holy Spirit very much, as the Holy Spirit is the messenger. And it represents also in many places the drums, the palos. That's the patron of the palos, because the palos are the voice of the Loa, the voice of God, in this tradition and in many African derived traditions. So the Holy Spirit is very big. The celebration, of course, of La Virgen de la Altagracia, which is the patron of the Dominican Republic, and even for many Haitians, the Altagracia, the Virgin of Altagracia, High Grace. She is very celebrated throughout Dominican Republic. We also keep that tradition. Another big tradition was Las Mercedes. La Virgen de la Mercedes was a big tradition also. People, of course, go to the Santo Cerro in in La Vega and all those areas. They make a pilgrimage, just like many people go to Higüey to La Virgen de la Altagracia. Um, so a lot of these saints are maintained. La Virgen de la Altagracia does represent, for many Dominicans that practice the 21 divisions, this lua called Ayla or Alayla, and she is basically a very old motherly lua. Okay, so she is very venerated. The main feast held by the Cofradia San Elias Rosario-Rodriguez was on November 2nd, and this was from what I understand, this was established by Petronila Rondon and then carried on by Tomasina Rosario right there. She was an enforcer of that tradition, and this was on November the 2nd, All Souls Day. And that's the day that we would honor the ancestors of the Cofradia and the Gede division, and El Barón del Cementerio, obviously also. That's the day that we do it. Some people celebrate the Barón del Cementerio on another day, but we do it on that day. And we basically do a service or a ceremony that we call it's called different names throughout the island, but mainly it's called Cabo de Año. Some people say Cabo de Año, which means like the end of the year ceremony, even though it's not at the end of the year. They also call it popularly a banco, which is the origin of the word. It's unknown, but a banco or a levantamuerto, or just una velada. They also say velación or velada. And this is basically, they do an honor of the dead where they feed it could be from one person or soul to many in the family, depending on the tradition. We do it, we basically honor all the members of the family that have passed on that day, and we do a feeding of the dead, and then they play Palo de Muerto, and this is basically a feast which honors the dead and reunites the family, and it also honors obviously the patron of the Cofradia, Barón del Cementerio, and all of the Gede. And that was our biggest ceremony. It's still continued till this day. Most of the family have come to the United States, so it's a little bit hard to maintain here, but we try to do it. We try to do it, even though it's not exactly on November the 2nd, but we try to do it, once a year at least, or however we can, because over here life is so hectic, and the work schedules, etc., etc. But that's a tradition that we follow still strongly, and do. Another big ceremony that was done before, and it actually was kind of lost or discontinued with the death of a lot of the elders, was a tradition called El Sabalú. El Sabalú, obviously you can hear the word for those of you that are knowledgeable in geography or African studies. Sabalú is a town in Benin Republic. El Sabalú to us is a deity, and by the studies that I've done, because obviously I'm a person that studies a lot of African spirituality and whatnot, from the conclusion, because the Sabalú was basically kind of like El Varón del Cementerio, but not exactly. So for us, El Sabalu was a deity or a spirit, a lua, un misterio. And that mystery, that lua, would dress in, well, it was a person that would possess El Sabalu. That person was then dressed in, it was basically like dried coconut or palm leaves and plátano leaves and yagua, different dried things. And it looked like raffia or something like that. And that person was covered in raffia and would carry una escoba de tiriguillo. We say escoba de tiriguillo. It's a broom made of these little branches. They're sticks that people make brooms out of in the countryside of the Dominican Republic. So basically, the Sabalu, and from me again being in other traditions and studying other traditions, was basically or is basically Satpata. Okay, but in my family, we call that deity El Sabalu. And the Sabalu has a shrine over there, or we call it El Poder, the power. And it's something that's buried in our land, and it can't be moved. Nothing can happen to that there. It has to remain there. And we, of course, do service to that power. So it's not exactly even a shrine. It's just a poder. Es un poder. Along with many other things that are there. So the Sabalu was a tradition that was done when a person in the Cofradia died. The Sabalu would lead the procession to the cemetery, which was a very short walk because the cemetery is right there. The Sabalu would lead the person into the cemetery, and that was basically it. The Sabalu was supposedly, the person was possessed with El Sabalu, and I guess the Sabalu kind of was cleaning the body in a certain way before, it coming into the cemetery. The Sabalu was also requested when a person in the Cofradia or an outsider that paid a fee to the Cofradia had a family member that was sick. So if there was a sick family member, the Sabalu would show up to their house and kind of cleanse the person. Even if the person was they knew that he was going to die, the Sabalu had to be there. Or they requested the Sabalu there to cleanse the person before death. I guess kind of like to cleanse the sins or whatever impurities spiritually that they had or whatever. So that was one of the purposes of the Sabalu. And if the person was very sick and was not death-bound, the Sabalu could cure them. And that was a strong and popular belief. But yeah, that was like the purpose of the Sabalu. And the Sabalu, like I said, would lead the processions to the cemetery. And of course, lead the people back to the house, to the historical or the house of the family there in La Lagunas. And yeah, that's what it was. The Cofradia's patron saint, San Elias, Barón del Cementerio, obviously it has been a very important thing because Tomasina, I think, or Petronila, one of the two, actually Petronila, which was Tomasina's mom, Petronila Rondon, they had a lot of, through the Rodriguez family, because remember she was from Cotuí, but she married a Rodriguez from Las Lagunas. she came into a lot of land, and she donated the land of the Church of La Laguna de Moca, which is the La Iglesia de San Ramón, Saint Raymond's Church. It's a small church for the town of Las Lagunas, and she also donated the land for the cemetery. She did that in honor of the Barón again of the cementerio, Barón del Cementerio, because it was our land, basically my family's land, and she donated it. Our bóveda, which is basically like the big tombs, the overground tombs. I forgot how you call them in English, but they're big overground tombs. The first one, when you go in, it's ours. So ours, right when you pass the gate, the first one on the left of the cemetery, and it's the first one, that's ours. So that was an honor given to us because of our patron, and because we donated the cemetery. They donated the cemetery. So a lot of history in this cofradia, and so that's what it was. Like I said, I was initiated in my teens. Initially, my grandfather, Mario Rosario, did some, beginners ceremonies and stuff like a Santiguo when I was small, before he died. And later on in life, because I was not the chosen one per se, but I looked for it. I gathered my information, and I went over to my granduncle, Dano Rosario, and when I went over with a lot of information, he couldn't deny it anymore, and because usually the elders do not want to give their family or anybody anything unless they must. So I guess he figured he must, because me and him were very close, and also because I did my investigation and got enough information. So once I went to him with that information, he said, okay, you're ready. You found out what you needed to find out, and you know the deal. Let's get you in. And that's when he initiated me and baptized me fully as into the tradition, into what we now call 21 División. Okay, so that's where my lineage comes from. That's my lineage, Las Lagunas de Moca. Officially the name, La Cofradía San Elias, Barón del Cementerio, de la familia Rosario-Rodriguez, from Las Lagunas Moca. So there's my story. And I am a papaboko. I was initiated. I did my 7 years of apprenticeship with my papaboko and many others, and I passed all my tests to earn the grade of boko. Then later on, I was able to initiate others, and I became a papaboko. And now I was left with the title of King of the Cofradia. So currently I am the King of the Cofradia. It doesn't mean much. I'm not a king. I'm not royalty. Nothing like that. It's just a title, which gives you more responsibility to help the family out spiritually, and to basically do the ceremonies. So being the king is just you're in charge of throwing the ceremonies and doing everything, and basically getting the people, the council, reunited to discuss whatever or do whatever. So, this was a title left to me by the last king, which was my papaboko, Dano Rosario. So he left me with that charge, I wasn't officially vested with it as they do, or voted one. It was just he left the charge to me before death. The queen of the cofradia is still alive. One of the queens, that one of the daughters of Tomasina and Pascual Rosario, and she is in the Dominican Republic. She lives in I think it's in Cacique or Wausi, and she is 97 years old right now, and she is the current queen of the cofradia. So, and she's still strong. So, she's still there. She's one of the original troncos, like we say, the tree. You know, she's one of the original branches of the tree. So she's still alive. And that's the story of the cofradia, more or less. I hope you guys enjoy. Blessings, and give me some more suggestions, all right?